Hello everyone, Hamish here once again, and welcome to my review of The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down by Anne Fadiman. Now you might remember a few videos ago I mentioned that this is the only book I've managed to finish reading this year, and I sure am glad it was such a good one. The title is a bit of a mouthful, and I will explain that later in the video, so stay tuned if for no other reason than that you want to find out what the title is about. Now I'm going to start by describing how I came across this book in the first place. This was actually the product of my active searching for something to read. It just so happened that this was the perfect find, because it is surprisingly specifically relevant to my current interests. There are two cultures which this book explores and engages with. One is the culture of the Hmong people of northern Laos, and the other is the culture of Western medicine. Now these two cultures might seem so disparate that you might be wondering why I'm interested in either of them. Well, for one thing, I am shortly going to Laos, and in fact by the time I upload this video I may well be in that country, so of course I wanted to know something about the place before I went. Also, I am thinking about becoming a doctor somewhere down the line, as, a career path, so any insight into how Western medicine functions could be really valuable in helping me decide what to do. In terms of the genre or style of this book, I think it's best described as a work of literary journalism. It almost reads like an extended, embellished magazine article. There is a strong sense of Fadiman's reporting skills as she interviews a whole host of people from different backgrounds in different places in order to piece together this story. I would liken it to Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. That's not it, that's the Communist Manifesto. Both books are written in an active, adaptive way, the kind you might hope to find in really good journalism. There's a sense that the authors are on the ground. They are observing, they're having emotional responses we can relate to, they're interpreting the scene before them, such that they themselves become a kind of character in the story. There is no agenda to this book. In fact, it's even unfair to say that there's a line of argument per se. A quote in the afterword expresses what I'm getting at. Journalism is the only occupation in which at all times you know less than anyone else in the room. Anne Fadiman has her doubts, she has her misgivings, just as we do. And this enables us to relate quite closely with the material that she's telling us about. There is no great separation between author and reader, and that's something I really admire about this book and about this style of literature. Now I can see another similarity between Into the Wild and The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down. Both books explore what can happen when two very different, even mutually exclusive cultural perspectives are forced into contact with one another. In Into the Wild, there was Christopher McCandless with his ethos of fierce independence, and that clashed with his parents' desire for a stable and social existence. In Anne Fadiman's book, there is a division between the shamanistic, insubordinate culture of Hmong refugees in Merced, California, and the cold, analytical, precise approach of Western medicine. What is of interest is how these cultures struggle against one another, and most of all, whether one day they may be able to cooperate. Now to finally get to the story of this book. The child of a Hmong refugee family in Merced, California is born with epilepsy. Her name is Leah Lee, and this is the early 1980s. Much of this book can be elucidated simply by looking at how the two cultures I mentioned earlier, Western medicine and the Hmong people, view Leah's disease. In the Hmong language, epilepsy is known as this, which translates to the spirit catches you and you fall down, hence the title. Epilepsy is believed to be caused by a demon known as a dab, which steals the soul of the epileptic person. This disease can be both a distinction, in that the epileptic is said to have some special connection with the spirit world, but more often than not it's a curse, as is especially the case for Leah. In order to cure Leah of her disease, the family follow traditional custom in arranging for a shaman to come and summon back Leah's soul. This ritual involves animal sacrifice, chanting, and in some cases, opium. By contrast, for the doctors of Merced, California, Leah's disease is caused by a disruption in her brain's electrochemical activity. She is to be treated with a heavy regimen of drugs, and in the event of a grand mal serious seizure, she's to be put in a hospital bed with IV drips and kept there for a long time away from her family. Perhaps you can already sense what the source of strife in this novel might be. Anne Fadiman traces the interaction between these two cultures and Leah's disease. She reveals that misunderstanding and miscommunication can have really calamitous consequences for all involved. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of Leah's case, it's in the book and you should definitely read it, but generally her illness is overshadowed by the mistrust and even the open hostility between her parents and the doctors who were looking after her. The best thing about this book is that we can empathize with both sides. Due to their cultural beliefs, Leah's parents don't administer her with the proper medication. Are they to be condemned for being negligent? Due to their medical training, the doctors of Merced tend to neglect their emotional capacity as human beings, instead relying on figures and analytics to treat Leah. Should they be blamed for doing the wrong thing? Throughout the book, there are many examples of incompetence when it comes to medical staff interacting with Hmong patients. At the beginning, a doctor is quoted saying that he has to practice veterinary medicine with the Hmong. Now, if the book has any general inclination, it is towards suggesting that greater cultural understanding on both sides would be to the benefit of patients and also to the integrity of medicine. However, that sort of understanding is much easier said than done. An interesting point raised by Fadiman is that medicine, instead of being intensely analytical and cold, needs to be a far more inclusive and relational discipline. Patients do not have cases, but narratives, as one medical anthropologist says in the book. Yet as beneficial as this idea sounds, Fadiman suggests that Western medicine might ultimately be incompatible with the belief system of a culture such as the Hmong. This comes down to a philosophical juncture, mentioned a few times in the book. The juncture between favoring the life or favoring the soul. For modern Western secular folks, there is no doubt that saving one's life is in all cases paramount. We believe that there is only one life, that it's held together by forces which we can understand and manipulate, and thus science is our ally in preserving our existence. Yet for the Hmong, medicine can be seen as an alien force, interfering not only with one's life, but with one's soul, one's afterlife, one's ancestors, and honor. Basically, to the Hmong view, health is a part of culture, and culture is a spiritual matter. Therefore, intervention of the medical kind can have far-reaching consequences. Can we, as Westerners, see those consequences? Probably not. Does that mean that they are to be dismissed? Well, that is the big question. An idea which is alluded to by this book, albeit from a distance, is that science might ultimately be just another ism. Now, in the West, we consider science to be something objective and something that's more or less all-powerful. It's not often that you have anyone with the courage to question or critique a scientific truth. However, for the Hmong people, science is just an ideology, and a foreign one at that, one which they cannot relate to. Could it be that shamanism and science are ultimately of a similar worth? Could it be that they could be incorporated into something new? That's the question which has probably stuck with me most from this book. I'm going to finish this review here. I hope it wasn't too rambling, but I wanted to at least attempt to consider the philosophical issues posed by this book. In short, The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down is a great read, and I highly recommend it. Thank you very much for watching. I'd be interested to hear your comments about anything I've discussed in this video. I'll see you next time. Farewell.